From awaytogarden.com and robinhoodradio.com, this is A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach, your weekly invitation to dig in and grow.
The mad stash is on. Time to put up the last homegrown foods and prepare to overwinter tender plants. And this month, Ken Druse and I are answering your urgent garden questions about those and other topics, including osage, oranges, and more. But first, this message.
Underwriting support from Timber Press, your go-to resource for books in gardening and nature. Whether you're a new gardener, a professional at the top of your field, or a reader interested in the wonders of the natural world, their books are there to help you grow. timberpress.com.
Ken Druse, whose 20th book, called The Scentual Garden, is due out October 15th, 2019, is a longtime garden writer and photographer and friend, and he's back to help answer more of your urgent garden questions today. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Margaret.
It's fall, Ken. It's fall.
It's just what I was thinking.
I know, and we should tell people we've seen each other recently in the sort of late September period. We've gotten to actually see each other in person. We even did urgent garden questions a cappella, out loud, alive.
Twice in 1 week.
Yeah, in front of audience. So that was fun at State University of New York at Albany at the New York State Writers Institute Book Fair and Book Festival. And that was fun.
And you looked marvelous.
Oh, marvelous. I was marvelous. I don't even remember what anyone asked us. You know what I mean? It goes in one ear and out the other. I guess because I was nervous. So
people asked us stuff?
Yeah, remember?
Oh, no.
Yeah, they did. So speaking of questions, before we sort of talk about what I promised in the introduction about sort of putting up things and what we're doing in our gardens and so forth, there was a fun question that I didn't know the answer to, but I could visualize what the person, Leslie, who wrote to me from, I believe, upstate New York, said, I tried Googling this question, but I couldn't find an answer, so I thought you or Ken might know. What's the purpose of the upside-down pots, like terracotta flower pots, on tops of stakes in the garden? Leslie wants to know. And
in Great Britain, I guess.
Yeah, so I wrote back to Leslie, I said, well, show me a picture of what you mean. Do you mean, because I thought I could visualize it also, and I thought, I've seen that. No, what is that? So what do you think?
I think it's so you don't poke your eye out.
Yeah. So, because it is, when you lean over, you have these damn stakes all over the place in the garden, and it is a little precarious.
Oh, you don't look at them? You don't see them?
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never had that happen, actually.
Yeah, no, I know. I think
my stakes are too tall.
Yeah. So people may have seen this, and it's also sort of fun, almost ornamental looking, and it made me, when at first she said it, I thought of your old friend Marcia Donahue and her garden in is that Berkeley?
Yes.
Berkeley, California, where she has all kinds of, like she has a bottle tree, or she did many years ago when you took me there, had a bottle tree, I think. She has different things like hanging in woody plants and, an artist's garden, whimsical things. But it's not that, I don't think, is it?
No, and many years ago when I had a greenhouse on the roof in Soho in New York City, I would put wine corks poke them on the top of stakes.
Oh.
Or make a little hole in them.
Yeah.
So if that happened, then you'd only bruise your eye.
Right, you'd run into a bigger thing, and you also might see it a little bit more or something.
I saw once somebody had ping pong balls that they spray painted with fluorescent paint.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, but yes.
Okay.
And you can get those styrofoam balls at the craft store. Here's another hole in the market, Margaret.
Right, another big business model that we should explore. We can make
get rich slow scheme.
Get rich slow, yeah, another one of Ken's. So Leslie, we think it's for safety. It's also kind of whimsical and quirky and fun, but we think it's for safety. That's what we think. So
remember when we used to be able to get thumb pots? Do you remember little thumb pots?
Yes, they were so cute.
So cute.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I saw a thumb pot.
Yeah, so little miniature terracotta pots, like the size for your doll, right?
Right, depending on the doll.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Like they're a little smaller than shot glasses, I guess.
Yeah,
Or,
totally cute.
Yeah, about that size.
Totally cute. So back to the main, lots of questions coming in about the Mad Stash, as I said in the introduction. So both, the food, Mad Stash. I don't know if have you been doing any sort of putting up, or you don't grow a lot of edibles, I don't think, but you do have herbs.
I don't grow a lot of edibles. I do have some herbs, and I occasionally dry some herbs. Does that count?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that. That's one of the things is, why spend $3 a bunch for herbs in the market in the winter when you can have some of your homegrown, either, as you say, dried. Do you do those in the oven or just out on the counter, or what do you do on racks?
I hang them in where the coats are supposed to be. And sometimes I'll take metal coat hangers and tie them onto metal coat hangers and then hang those on another hanger or something, get it whatever I can.
Right.
Rosemary, things like that.
Right. And I freeze a lot of things. And so I freeze, I take the parsley leaflets, I spin them in the salad dryer, the whole sprig of parsley, the stems, the stalks with multiple leaflets on them, spin them to wash them in the salad dryer and dry them off, take off the leaflets, stuff them into the bottoms of quart freezer bags, and roll that up real tight when it's about the diameter of between a quarter and a half a dollar. So like a log in the bottom, roll it up and put rubber bands, seal the bag and put rubber bands around it. And then anytime I want some parsley, I cut off like a medallion, a coin off the end of it, so to speak, and put it back in the bag. I freeze chopped chives in little jars, little freezer, little half-pint ball jars in the freezer, so I'll have chopped chives if I just want that for a garnish on something. I make a lot of pesto cubes of virtually any herb you can make into that, right? Even if you don't have perfect herb, you can make it into a pesto cube. But do label them, people, because all those green ice cubes look the same.
Oh, I can't believe you said that. Do you have a dehydrator?
I do, and I've never used it.
Incredible. I know. It's like pet rocks.
No, I got all jazzed up. I want to make dried apple slices. In my older age, I've gotten into dried fruit somewhat, and dried fruit is very expensive, and I thought, I'll be, so smart, I'll start making it because I have apples. And I thought I'll make, and so I got the thing, and guess what? Another get-rich-slow scheme is that, or save-money-slow scheme is that if you buy the dehydrator and don't use it, that's not a money-saving device.
Sounds like a garage sales in your future.
But at any rate, so I do a lot of freezing of herbs, both some of them with a little water just to make like a paste and freeze it as cubes and knock them out into bags, or with oil, or, you can make the full-on pesto, the traditional pesto with all the ingredients and freeze that too. But, I do a lot of that. And I just did trays of roast tomatoes to cut up hunks of tomatoes with like onion and garlic and a little olive oil and roast that until it's kind of caramelized a little bit, and put those in either freezer bags or containers. And you can use that for making soup or sauce later. And then, of course, I made my tomato sauce for the freezer. I've got a whole bunch of that put away. And whole tomatoes I freeze. And tomato soup I made. Have you ever made tomato soup? I'm looking for the perfect recipe. I don't know if I have it yet, but I did the one with the bread in it. Where you roast the tomatoes again with like garlic, onion, and it's kind of thick and yummy. You then, toward the end, as you blend it up with an immersion blender, you put in the, bread, and it seems good, but there's something missing in what I think is that most
cream.
I think that's one thing, and I think the other thing is I really think a lot of tomato soups that we are used to tasting have a lot more salt and also have some sugar in them.
Sugar, of course.
Do you know what I mean? And I haven't done that, so
It doesn't take a lot of sugar. It just takes the acid.
Acidic. Yep.
Just changes the acid to brightness.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it was an afterthought. And I thought, you know what, Margaret? Don't guess. You can do that. You can adjust when you unfreeze it.
That's true.
Right? You know what I mean? So I just sort of thought, let me think about it, and use a little bit of it, and then adjust. So, yeah.
Well, our dear friend Louis Bauer grew all the vegetables for his family in Pennsylvania, for the family of 14, and they had a pantry in their basement filled with jars, as you can imagine, giant gallon jars of everything you can imagine, pickles and tomatoes. And
wow.
talk about sugar. His mother put so much sugar in the tomato juice. Ooh.
Oh.
But they had dandelion wine.
Wow.
But corn went in the freezer.
Oh. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It would be better in the freezer than pickled.
Oh, yeah, really. Well, pickled maybe, but, just cooked corn, I don't know.
Nasty.
Canned corn.
Nasty.
We used to have that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So what about putting up the garden, so to speak? I mean, we're in the north, both of us, and in a lot of the country it's still quite hot and no urgency at all. But I looked on the long-range forecast, and I saw that in the first week of October in my area, we're expected to have temperatures in the 30s, not necessarily a frost or a freeze, but temperatures in the 30s. So have you sort of felt the trigger at all and started putting anything away? Uh-oh.
I can't believe we're talking about this again. Every year,
I know.
I promise myself September 15th, everything will be inside.
Yeah, give or take.
September 15th came, September 15th went.
Yeah.
Not everything is in yet. I brought in the begonias. We've gone down, I know you've gotten colder, but we went down to 41, and then it was 87.
Yes.
So it's not really here. Well, it is maybe now, but it isn't here. It wasn't there yet then.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what, again, looking at like the 10-day forecast and so forth for the overnights, I covered them on that night when it was going into the low 40s. I made, with tarps and props and stuff. I made like tents and where I have the two groupings of houseplants, it's right adjacent to the house in a very sheltered spot under an overhanging roof and so forth. So, it's kind of a microclimate anyway. So, but this coming in a matter of days, they're coming in for good. So yes.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And I have a flight of stairs too, so that doesn't help one bit.
Yeah. So we had a question from Mike who had read something that I'd written about. I guess he'd found it through Google search or whatever on the blog years ago about having trees and shrubs, especially Japanese maples, in pots that I overwinter in my garage. And he wanted to know, he had some young ones, small ones, and they're in small pots. And he wanted to know.
Done that.
Yeah, what do you do about that? Because things in small pots, like 6-inch pots, that kind of a pot size, it doesn't have that insulation value of a giant pot around, like a whiskey barrel size pot around the roots, right?
The cold, it doesn't freeze just down from the top. It freezes up from the bottom, in from the sides, down from the top.
So, I mean, keeping something like that over the winter, potted things that technically are hardy in your zone, but they're not hardy above ground in a tiny little volume of soil, right?
Right. So I've done a lot of different things. I've buried pots in the ground, not covering them, just right to the rim.
Right.
And that kind of works. I would do it, as soon as you possibly can. I have in my life put stuff in leaves, you could do it in straw or not straw, hay, just mound them up with mulch.
Right.
And that may work. It's best if you have the perfect, talk about root cellar. If you have a place that goes down to about 40 or 30,
yes, not super
but not
cold.
below 20, then I've done that. I do that with Japanese maples. I have a few that, I meant to get in the ground, but they're not in the ground yet.
Right.
And they'll just go to this space that I have that the coldest it's ever gotten was 20. But usually it's around 30 or so. And I don't even have lights on. They drop their leaves.
Sure,
and as long as I get them out in March before sometimes they get leaves and oh my goodness, and then you pull them out and the leaves all fall off, and then it has to make a new set of leaves. But ideally, take them out in March
before they wake up.
And that works.
Yeah.
But I think you could also put the pot in a bigger pot, much bigger pot, and schlep that in, which is similar to putting it in the ground.
Well, and so what you're kind of talking about is like plunging it, so to speak, or healing it in somewhere. And if the pot's a breakable terracotta pot, you can't do that in an outdoor environment, right? But if it's not, if it's just a nursery pot, you could do that. You could, if you have an empty vegetable garden, for goodness sake, you could plunge the thing. And like last year, never happened to me before again because, I'm so perfect. But I saw that I had a couple of perennials and even a shrub, actually a tree peony also that someone had gifted me late in the season. And I realized they were still sitting in the driveway in their nursery pots. Duh. And you know what? I had a delivery of mulch, of really nice mulch, and it was, it wasn't frozen yet. And what I did is I kind of dug them into there so that they were buried to their necks. I mean, to the top of the pot so that they were, and they didn't miss a beat. They were perfectly fine. I use the empty vegetable garden bed sometimes and do that, heal things in. Yeah. So.
Well, we completely agree.
Oh, my goodness. Then one of us must be wrong. Oh, no, wait. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm having a nervous breakdown.
Did you read that in a fortune cookie?
I did. So one of the things about this time of year, besides like where we're going to stash things, and we can give links to, we've had this conversation, as you pointed out, like every fall we do on the show. And I'll give everybody with the transcript of the program a list of like how to store dahlias, how to store cannas, how to store, all this stuff, prescriptive stuff for certain special needs plants and tender things and so forth. But one of the things that I think everyone forgets to talk about is weeding. And you were just telling me about this the other day. You're on a weeding campaign. I think this is the most important weeding time of the year, right? The cleanup, before cleanup.
Yeah, but weeding is like 9 months of the year, I think.
Yeah.
You just have to not stop.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Well, we don't want things to go to seed, which they're doing right now.
Yes.
And then drop the seeds in the garden, especially the dreaded stiltgrass.
And even something as familiar and less benign like crabgrass. I mean, that's what you want to prevent, is not to have as many crabgrass seeds around to sprout next year in bare areas, right? I mean, even that, let alone stiltgrass, which is your nemesis, I think.
Well, this year, though, I've talked to a lot of people, and it seems like this is the crabgrass year for people all over. I was in Minnesota, crabgrass, Massachusetts, crabgrass. Seems like how about you, crabgrass?
Yes.
Unbelievable. I don't really have a lawn exactly, but usually it's a mix of interesting things. This year, it's almost all crabgrass and what do you call that ground ivy? Do you call it creeping jenny or ground? I guess creeping jenny is different.
Glaucoma heteracea.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing, and it loves to creep to the edges of beds and into the bed. So it's just it's really,
especially because we had rain in the spring and the
that's
leaves
what I think. Yeah.
They're like wild ginger. They're so big.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I hand dug with a weeding knife the crabgrass out of the so-called alleged lawn. This year, no way I could do that. It's mostly crabgrass, the whole thing.
Well, and the thing about crabgrass is that, again, since it's something that sows, it's like annual, it sows and sprouts, right? So if you just dig it out and leave the bare soil, then next year the cycle will repeat itself, because there's bare soil. And if you let it especially go to seed and there's bare patches, thin patches in your lawn, it has a field day. It loves it. So really we have to, it's one thing to take it out and behead it or whatever, but leaving those thin patches where it can sprout again because light, the conditions are right and light gets to the seed, not a good thing. So we've got to prevent it from doing that by overseeding with desired grasses. And in our area in the north, you want to do that from mid-August to mid-September or something, multiple overseedings, or even just putting mulch on the damn area, something that prevents it from that light hitting the area and it's sprouting again, right, until you get the lawn repaired. Because bare spots are where crabgrass loves to inhabit, and that's why for me it mostly gets the edges again, just like that glaucoma, the ground ivy.
Edges.
Yeah, edges. Yes. So super important right now, I think, to keep after it, and even if you can't dig out, some alien thistles or whatever, if they're going to seed, cut the heads off into a paper bag or into a garbage bag and put those in the trash. Get rid of them. Don't let 1,000 seeds spread all over the place, if that makes any sense, even if you can't dig the whole thing.
The garlic mustard is long past, but I dig that out in the spring, pull it out in the spring, and then when it gets late and it starts to flower, I just walk around with scissors and a paper bag and just cut their heads off.
So at least you're reducing its self-seeding ability for that year's crop. Right. So we have another question. Now, where's the question? I have it written down here somewhere. Oh, Susan. It was Susan. She says, have we ever come across osage orange trees? Sometimes farmers used to use them as hedgerow fences in their fields because they have thorns, she says. And she loves them. They have like the fruits, kind of bright greenish, chartreusey with a wart-like surface. She loves them in a bowl and also as they dry. And they're fragrant, the fruits, and she wants to know, do we have any information on them or is anyone selling them? I was able to find that Forest Farm catalog. It was one of the only places I could find them available, probably a young seedling, sapling, mail order. But have you grown them? Have you grown osage orange? It's a native plant to some of the southern United States.
Right,
yeah?
not here.
No.
But there used to be a remnant of a hedge near here, and I would go I still do because there's one tree left, a female tree, I guess. And I would go and collect them and enjoy them on the table for about a month and then return them to where they came from, hoping that some would sprout.
Right. I remember picking one up on the side of the road by the New York Botanical Garden along the Parkway there. There was one of all the crazy things. Yeah.
I love they smell kind of like ginger with grapefruit. It's a pungent smell, but it's a really nice smell.
Yeah.
This last winter, one fruit got away, and it was out over the winter and it got disgusting, which I'm sure happens in nature too. And the seeds sprouted in the fruit.
Oh, weird.
And I thought, I've got trees. And so I potted them up and they look really good, but we had too much rain and the seed leaves came up, but then the true leaves kind of rotted. So I didn't get a tree, but I don't know, where would I put it? Besides in my lifetime, anyway.
Exactly. But you mentioned something interesting. You said female tree, and this is a plant that some plants have male flowers and some have female flowers. So they're separate sexes. So not all the different individual trees can get fruit anyway, right? So some are going to be non-fruiting by pollinators or whatever.
Right.
And I mentioned before, it's a Native American plant in the sense of like parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, I think, and now it's become naturalized because of its being used years ago as a hedgerow to keep out, sort of in agricultural settings. Because of its nice thorniness and so forth. It's become naturalized in some areas where that was the case, and in some places maybe, when I say naturalized, maybe a little too ambitious as well.
Well, in the old days, they would cut it.
Right.
So it wouldn't flower and fruit.
Right.
They'd make it just 4 feet high or something to keep the cows in.
Right. And then once that hedge was no longer maintained, it got out of control, and some of them, there were too many of them in certain places.
And now in this area right here, I know where there's one female, and there must be a male somewhere, but only one tree left. They've just developed everything around it.
Well, in the last minute or so, I want to just tell everybody, I mentioned at the top of the program that you have your 20th book, The Scentual, Scentual Garden, coming out in mid-October this year. And so you're going to come back in a couple of weeks and we're going to talk fragrance, a subject that I knew nothing about till I read this book. No, I mean, seriously, I really didn't. So we're going to have a whole program about fragrance. Yes? You're going to come back?
Yes. Sounds good.
Usually you'll answer all my questions about fragrance.
Uh-oh.
Any other last-minute chores you want to tell us about besides the weeding and the stilt grass annihilation that you're up to over there?
Well, if you find an osage orange tree and you don't park under it, that's a big mistake. You'll get dents in your car.
Oh.
Do gather the fruits for a little while and then put them back like I should do.
Okay. All right. Use them as like a air freshener kind of, what do you call it, incense in the house temporarily.
Better than Glade. I hate to mention a
Okay.
product.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Good.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Bye.
Underwriting support from Timber Press, your go-to resource for books in gardening and nature. Whether you're a new gardener, a professional at the top of your field, or a reader interested in the wonders of the natural world, their books are there to help you grow. timberpress.com.
And I'll talk to all the rest of you again soon, I hope, too. Now, don't miss an episode. You can subscribe free to the podcast version of the show on Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify. And find me anytime at awaytogarden.com or at awaytogarden on Facebook and Instagram. And happy gardening meantime.
A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach is a joint production of awaytogarden.com and the smallest NPR station in the nation, Robin Hood Radio.